This video is about the 4 types of pleas that are allowed in an Alabama criminal case. Of course, the first type of plea that is allowed is a guilty plea. A guilty plea, of course, means somebody's going in and say, I did it. There is a variation on a guilty plea that some, but not all, judges allow, and that is called a best interests plea. And that comes up when somebody says, look, I see the evidence is completely against me. I see I can't win the case, but I just don't want to say I did it. I can't say I did it. Some judges will allow a person to enter what's called a best interests plea. You need to be aware that even if you're in front of a judge who allows a best interests plea, the record of the case is still going to show that the person pled guilty. It's no different. The other thing is that many judges don't like best interests plea, and frankly, a lot of defense lawyers don't like best interests pleas. The reason is that when somebody is pleaded guilty, of course, the next thing that comes is the sentencing. And a person who says, look, I did wrong and I'm accepting the responsibility for what I did, they have a better position to argue than somebody who's saying, look, the evidence is going to convict me, so I got no choice. And so for a defense lawyer, somebody who is saying, I made a mistake, there is some element of forgiveness there. There's some element of mercy that can be argued with somebody who's saying, I made a mistake, that goes away when somebody says, I got no choice. And what's the next type of plea? Next type of plea, as a matter of fact, I'm going to go into the next 3 types of pleas, and the next 3 types of pleas typically are going to result in a trial. So what's the next one? Of course, it is a plea of not guilty. I didn't do it. The evidence isn't sufficient to convict me, and the standard in Alabama, of course, is you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. If the state can't prove it, then the person's entitled to a judgment of not guilty. But not guilty is a person saying, I didn't do it, the evidence isn't there. The next type of plea is a plea of, I am not guilty because of a mental disease or defect. And in this type of plea, the person is saying, look, I may have committed the physical actions that constitute the crime, but I am suffering from some sort of mental disease, some sort of defect that absolves me from responsibility, that removes my blame for the case. Now, the reality is that while this case is sometimes successfully mounted, juries are often very reluctant to accept this kind of defense. They don't like to say, oh, you're not responsible, that you didn't have free will or whatever. It is a legitimate defense, and in some cases it is a successful defense, but it's one of those kind of defenses that should be used, of course, with some degree of caution. The next defense is a defense of not guilty and not guilty by reason of mental disease and defect. And here a person is saying, look, I didn't do it, but even if I did do it, I'm not to be held accountable because I am suffering from some sort of mental disease or defect. You have the same kind of issues, but that is a legitimate and recognized defense under Alabama law. Now, before somebody enters any kind of a plea, they really, absolutely, even on a misdemeanor, any kind of a case, they should talk to a criminal defense lawyer, preferably a very competent criminal defense lawyer. In the 30-some-odd years that I've practiced law, I've had people come in and they tell me, well, I committed this crime, and I've listened and I've thought, you know what? You're not guilty of that crime. You think you committed it, but it's not that crime. Sometimes I've had people come in and they say, I didn't do it. I did nothing wrong. And you listen and you go, I hate to tell you this, but you did commit the crime. Here's what the elements are, and you did it. You are guilty. So you really need to discuss these things with a criminal defense lawyer. Of course, if you want our help, give us a call. I do hope that you found this video to be educational and informative. Thank you for watching.